The film begins with cybersecurity specialist Daniel Kellner watching a fight, visibly shaken. During the event, a strange man tries to confiscate Daniel's backpack, but the young man refuses to hand it over and demands news about Jane's whereabouts. In response, a woman points a gun at him and asks if he wants to see her again. With no alternative, Daniel hands over the backpack containing the confidential data he had stolen. Outside, a team analyzes the flash drives filled with cosmic secrets. Meanwhile, Noah Scanlon waits to confront him. Noah is the CEO of Wardex Corporation, a secret organization that for nearly 80 years has covered up evidence of extraterrestrial life. After being subdued, Daniel is taken to the Wardex base, where he reunites with Jane, also in custody. The two are placed in a tense interrogation led by Noah, who demands the names of their accomplices in exchange for the couple's freedom. When he notices that the backpack brought by his henchman is missing the alien device, the team is caught by surprise. Daniel puts on a glove and reveals the artifact hidden in his own hand. Noah forbids his men from shooting to avoid activation and tries to negotiate, warning that the object is deadly. Daniel backs away and protects Jane in the car, while Noah warns with disdain that reality outside the screens of a scythe will cause irreversible chaos in the world. Daniel replies that this was always the plan and flees, leaving Noah furious with his agents for having been humiliated by a simple nerd. During the escape, Jane demands explanations, but Daniel focuses on shaking off the car's trackers and warns that her house is already being watched. He asks her to take the wheel while he stores the alien device. Then, he calls Hugo, who celebrates the success of the theft, but Daniel cuts off the celebration by warning about the seriousness of the situation. He demands that someone else collect the bag with the artifact, claiming to be only a field technician unprepared for the danger. Hugo refuses and insists on the plan, ordering him to hide Jane and wait for Agent Santiago's contact in the morning. Irritated and pressured, Daniel threatens to leak everything on the internet and disappear. But Hugo drastically forbids him and demands patience. Hugo orders Daniel to destroy the phone to avoid satellite tracking. When questioned by Jane, Daniel explains that the ally has an encrypted single-use network and confesses that they need to hide in a place they have never used before. Jane reveals that she knows a safe place nearby. Meanwhile, at Wardex headquarters in Virginia, Noah ignores the pressure from the Pentagon. He minimizes the escape to the employee by classifying the case as a small breach and postpones Musgrave's call so as not to show weakness. Focused on hunting Daniel, Noah receives a new report from Boyd. 12 company employees simply did not show up for work and left their desks completely empty. Noah realizes that he is facing a planned operation and questions the true objective of the intruders. He deduces that Daniel is merely buying time instead of releasing the data and orders an immediate investigation. In private, Boyd reveals that Hugo also missed work and left his desk empty. He reports the disappearance of a device from deep storage, while the third artifact remains locked in the cold room. Noah silently observes Hugo's photo with clear concern. In parallel, Daniel and Jane arrive at an orphanage and receive help from Sister Mora. The nun tends to Jane's injuries and confronts Daniel, demanding that he take responsibility for his actions and spare his partner from danger. Later, the two talk about the past. Daniel questions Jane's background and confesses that he hid his true identity to protect his own life. Jane pushes back about his omissions and clarifies that she was never a fully formed nun, but rather a novice. Tired of answering questions, Jane asks Daniel about the stolen content. He explains that he took data under contract and argues that people deserve to know the truth. Faced with her curiosity, he compares the revelation to the loss of the novice's own faith. Daniel reveals that he was recruited by Wardex 8 years earlier, shortly after leaving a federal prison. He details that he served 19 months in Petersburg for cybercrimes and that his unique skills caught the company's attention. He confesses that he lives surrounded by secrets to survive and that he hid the truth to keep her safe. Daniel admits that he discovered unimaginable facts over the last 3 months. Holding Jane's hands, he assures her that the data revealed deep secrets instead of mere corporate information. He regrets her involvement, but reinforces that humanity has the right to know the whole truth. The next day, The story presents meteorologist Margaret Fairchild and her boyfriend Jackson. During a conversation about the future, Margaret suggests another move to a new city, but the musician reminds her that they have already moved before and questions the destination. She admits her own impasse, and Jackson argues that running away does not solve problems, celebrating the current phase of his music career. The dialogue is interrupted when a cardinal bird enters the apartment and approaches the couple. Margaret becomes strangely hypnotized by the animal until her boyfriend drives it out of the place. Then, she begins speaking Russian involuntarily, leaving Jackson intrigued about how she learned the language. Noticing that she is late for her first day after her promotion at work, Margaret ends the subject with the promise that they will talk later. In traffic, Margaret is stopped for speeding and tries to justify herself because of the delay. The police officer becomes suspicious of the documents and aggressively orders her to get out of the vehicle. Noticing the officer's tension, Margaret mentions intimate details of his life and quotes exact phrases said by his wife Anna that morning. Intimidated by the apparent mind reading, the officer gives in and allows her to continue. At the station, Margaret is reprimanded by her boss because of her lateness. Backstage, she continues revealing personal secrets of the colleagues around her and impresses the team by easily translating a Korean investor. During the live broadcast of the weather program, Margaret begins to feel ill. She emits a sound at an unusual frequency that frightens the technical team. She continues transmitting the strange signal until she faints on stage. In the morning, Daniel is awakened by the horn of a car and says goodbye to Jane with the promise to return when the danger passes. He leaves to meet Santiago, but Jane gets into the vehicle and refuses to stay behind, demanding to know the whole truth later. Santiago starts the car, and they leave the orphanage. During the trip, Daniel questions Hugo by phone about how long that escape will last. Hugo asks for calm and assures him that Santiago will take them to a safe house. The atmosphere heats up when the driver orders the two to hide after spotting Wardek's cars crossing the road. At the corporation's headquarters, Noah faces a tense meeting with Pentagon officials, who criticize the loss of the alien device and threaten to use federal forces. Noah rejects the interference to avoid mass panic and takes responsibility for the search. Agent Serena interrupts the discussion to show the video of Margaret's fainting and bizarre transmission. After the team confirms that the sounds emitted by the meteorologist match the expected alien frequency, Noah orders Margaret's immediate capture before Hugo's group reaches her. In parallel, Margaret undergoes an MRI at the hospital to investigate the cause of her collapse, under Jackson's tense and worried gaze. At the same time, Santiago completes the route and leaves Daniel and Jane at the agreed refuge, but the pair finds the place completely abandoned. When they arrive at the place, some deer stare at the couple. Daniel shows immediate discomfort with the situation, while Jane, not understanding his reaction, again pressures him to explain what is happening. Daniel evades the subject and says that she would hardly believe him if he revealed the whole truth at that moment. Daniel takes the backpack and decides to show Jane the whole truth so that she can see the secrets with her own eyes. At the hospital, Margaret receives the clean MRI result and finds the absence of changes strange. During the consultation, the doctor asks routine questions about Margaret's father's history of Parkinson's and asks whether she carries trauma from a childhood event at 12 years old. Jackson intervenes and reveals that his wife often has frequent nightmares involving butterflies. The mood becomes heavy when Margaret notices two men watching the room. The doctor explains that they are federal agents, but Margaret reads the men's minds and discovers that their identities are false. When the individuals knock on the door, Margaret approaches the glass and catches Daniel's name in their thoughts. Frightened, Jackson asks who this man is, and Margaret reveals that those agents want to see Daniel dead. Frightened, Margaret asks Jackson to help her fake a trip to the bathroom as a distraction. Her boyfriend tries to understand the danger while she gathers some clothes to escape the room. While changing clothes, Margaret reads Jackson's thoughts and realizes that he is hiding an intimate secret. He denies the accusation with confusion, but she ends the subject, claiming that they need to focus on the immediate escape. At the refuge, Daniel opens the files and shows Jane a confidential Wardek's recording made at Homestead Air Force Base in 1973. Jane notices a famous star from the 1950s beside President Nixon, and Daniel explains that the political leader was trying to impress the celebrity. The video shows scientists in a cold chamber revealing bodies that Jane initially confuses with children. Daniel corrects her and warns her about the brutality of the rest of the material obtained through Hugo. At Jane's insistence, the recording shows corporation employees torturing small creatures in cruel experiments. The suffering of the beings makes Daniel pause the video out of pure emotional discomfort. He confesses to a horrified Jane that that file represents only a fraction of almost 80 years of recorded abuses. At Wardx headquarters, Boyd delivers another alien device to Noah. When using the artifact together with a photo of Daniel to try to locate him, Noah feels intense physical pain and interrupts the procedure. He reports having seen Daniel for a brief instant, but the glimpse was not enough to discover his exact whereabouts. Faced with failure, Noah orders his team to direct their efforts toward obtaining information through Jane. Meanwhile, Daniel explains to Jane that the stolen files expose secret programs focused on the recovery of technology of unknown origin. The material details studies of non-human biological entities and reverse engineering projects for commercial and military exploitation. Daniel states that Wardx conducts the operations in partnership with the Department of Defense since the 1970s without any external oversight. He adds that enormous amounts of public money finance the secrecy and reveals that after the Nixon government, the data stopped being shared with presidents because they become civilians again at the end of their terms. Daniel admits that he participated in the operations without knowing the truth, and that he decided to expose the secret upon discovering the company's abuses. Worried, Jane questions the consequences of releasing the information to the entire world. But Daniel argues that it is not up to him to hide such an important reality. Jane replies that the right to know could cause catastrophic consequences, which makes Daniel ask if she really prefers to leave control of a universal truth in Wardx's hands. She disagrees and asks him to abandon the idea, warning that society would begin to treat the beings as divinities, forgetting God and shaking collective faith. Daniel recalls his partner's own crisis of faith, but Jane reinforces that social collapse in the face of superior creatures is a real danger. Unyielding, Daniel says that Hugo is already waiting for an answer and decides to leave the refuge to look for a communication signal. As a precaution upon noticing Jane's gaze fixed on the backpack, he decides to take the equipment with him. Meanwhile, Margaret and Jackson reach the car when she receives a call from Hugo, who offers protection and praises her reaction to the facts. Frightened, Margaret hears the ally explain that he located her after the TV broadcast. Upon learning that she already knows Daniel's name and is being pursued, Hugo orders Margaret not to return home, to flee to a safe place, and to destroy the phone to avoid tracking. Jackson helps Margaret break the device, but becomes jealous when he hears his wife demand that they drive north after Daniel. Margaret becomes irritated and clarifies that she has never met the young man, but insists that they need to find him. At Wardx headquarters, Noah uses the device's technology to try to locate Jane, causing her to feel something strange during the procedure. At the same time, Hugo manages to speak with Daniel and sends the video of the transmission in which Margaret emits an unusual frequency. Daniel asks what happened to her and repeats the phrase said by Margaret about not being afraid of the unknown. Surprised, Hugo reveals that no one had understood the message because it was not in English. But Daniel says that he heard everything in his native language. Faced with the revelation, Hugo decides to send Daniel to Kansas City to meet Margaret and warns that a car will pick him up that same night. Daniel admits that he is frightened by the situation, but Hugo replies that now there are two of them and that it has always been that way. Soon after, the plants around Daniel begin to move and form a strange symbol, leaving him completely unable to understand the phenomenon. The same symbol appears on the alien device Noah is using at Wardx headquarters. Jane suffers the physical effects of the equipment while Noah temporarily takes control of her body. Frightened, Jane says a prayer when Noah appears before her demanding her location. She tries to resist, but the man forces her to reveal that she is with Daniel. To cut the mental connection, Jane uses a crucifix to injure her own hand and break contact. Wardx uses the information to identify the location. Furious, Noah reestablishes the link and returns to interrogating Jane. Unable to injure herself again, she gives in and reveals that they spent the night at the monastery of St. Clair, allowing the intelligence team to track the exact place. Noah dispatches agents for the capture and orders Jane to stop Daniel by any means if the henchmen fail. Before breaking the link, Noah mentally presses Jane's hand wound, making her scream in pain. Noah suffers the physical consequences of the alien device during his medical treatment. Even weakened, he connects again to Jane to try to convince her that Daniel will cause social collapse. Jane agrees with the danger, but refuses to betray Daniel, which makes Noah psychologically manipulate her until he forces her to pick up a knife. In parallel, Margaret has a vision of the scene and uses Jackson's phone to warn Daniel that Wardex has discovered the refuge and that Jane is under mind control. Jackson is frightened by the scene and takes the device back. Daniel suspects the warning, but returns cautiously and finds Wardex agents at the place. He sneaks around, breaks into one of the enemy vehicles, and creates a noisy distraction under crossfire to rescue Jane from the house. Jane gets into the car without resisting, and the two flee into a new pursuit. On the road, Noah tries to make her kill Daniel, but he notices his partner's strange behavior and tries to awaken her. To break the link for good, Jane drives the knife into her own hand, transmitting the real pain to Noah, who faints from the extreme effort with the artifact. Daniel and Jane continue the escape under crossfire until a Wardex car crashes and blocks the pursuer's path. At the company headquarters, Boyd touches the device without protection and is teleported for a few moments, reappearing unconscious. The scare makes the employees adopt the use of gloves to handle the artifact, while Noah regains consciousness. On the road, Daniel shakes off the enemies by entering a dirt road. Jane notices that they have been located again and screams for Daniel to brake before they fall off a cliff. The pair abandons the car, and Jane wedges a rock against the accelerator to make the vehicle plunge into the abyss. They hide while the agents arrive and call for rescue, believing in the couple's death, allowing Daniel and Jane to escape on foot. In parallel, Margaret and Jackson stop at a station where he tries to convince her to return to the hospital. Margaret replies by revealing that she read Jackson's mind about his desire to abandon her if they moved. She explains that a natural force guides her like a passenger, and Jackson, convinced and touched by the explanation, decides to support her. He asks if they should still go north, but Margaret warns that Daniel changed the route to the east and that she can feel this new direction, and offers to guide him. Jackson pretends to go get water and walks away to call a doctor, reporting Margaret's behavior and the station's location. Margaret realizes the betrayal and flees with the car. She leaves a message with a local boy saying that she loves Jackson, but that she needs to continue alone to the east. Later, Daniel talks with Hugo, who orders him to go to Kansas City. Daniel confesses that old memories are returning in the form of visions of friendly and frightening animals, unable to distinguish reality from a dream. While turning off the shower that turns on by itself, Daniel cries and asks if there was a specific reason for his recruitment at Wardex. Hugo admits that there was, but evades the subject by saying that he cares about Daniel and that the mission must continue. Daniel laments the disappearance of memories from his childhood and admits his fear. Hugo reassures him, guaranteeing that Daniel will understand the truth at the right time. Before ending the call under Jane's listening, Hugo orders Daniel to reach a place called KCXE, leaving the young man surprised by the revelation. Daniel shows Margaret's recording to Jane after the bath and asks if she understands the message. Jane hears only sounds, but Daniel explains that he mentally translates the frequency as words in English and shows a notebook with notes of everything Margaret says. Aware that Noah can still control her, Jane admits that Daniel should not trust her and asks to be tied up. During the night, Noah again takes over Jane's body. Even unable to free her because she is tied up, he reads the notes on Daniel's hands and discovers the name of the hotel, passing the information to the team. Santiago notices the enemy siege and tries to alert Daniel, who wakes Jane in a hurry. They flee to the bathroom, and Jane jumps out the window with the little money Daniel gives her. Daniel gives her the alien device, begging her not to touch the object. The agents break down the door and capture Daniel, while Jane escapes and Santiago flees, reporting the arrest. Later, Boyd searches Daniel's backpack without success and tries to force him to reveal the artifact's whereabouts, but Daniel only laughs. The next morning, Daniel is taken to Noah, who says that the young man was deceived by Hugo. Noah declares the end of the hunt and demands to discover what the rebel allies' true plan is. Noah demands the device's location, but Daniel remains silent. In parallel, Margaret arrives at the Wardeck's base and uses mind reading on the guards to discover Daniel's whereabouts. She invades the facility and arouses suspicion until she reaches the interrogation room, where Noah recognizes her as the woman from the TV broadcast. Noah tries to prevent her approach, but Margaret invades the man's mind and makes him have visions of his wife, managing to distract him. Boyd tries to intervene, but Noah orders that no one touch her. Margaret finally reaches Daniel, and when they touch, both feel that they already know each other. Boyd alerts the agents that they are now facing two targets and forbids them from escaping the base. During the escape through the complex, Margaret projects visions of important people to the employees trying to stop them, opening a path to the car. Daniel asks if she knows them, but Margaret denies it and orders him to get into the vehicle so they can begin the escape. At the base exit, Noah confesses to Boyd that the vision was of his deceased wife. Shaken and unable to understand Margaret's powers, he hears Boyd warn that she is unstoppable. Determined, Boyd gathers weapons in the facility and takes a vehicle to begin hunting the pair. On the road, Margaret tells Daniel that the destination is Kansas City by pure instinct, and reveals that she can see flashes of his past when she looks in his direction. Margaret details that this ability appeared the day before, shortly after the visit of a bird in her apartment. Daniel asks if the animal was a cardinal, and the confirmation frightens Margaret. Shortly afterward, the route is interrupted by a train line, and Daniel decides to use the stop to tell a story from his past. Daniel reports that in childhood he was observed by a cardinal in the dark, and that the event changed everything, making him see mental patterns and equations. Margaret completes the account by seeing the memory through Daniel's mind, and notices his suffering in living isolated until meeting Jane. While the train passes, Daniel repeats the phrase from the TV broadcast, but Margaret says that she does not remember what she said. The moment is interrupted when Boyd hits the rear of the vehicle to push them onto the tracks. Margaret holds the brake in panic from the impact, and the car ends up trapped and dragged by the train. Daniel breaks the glass and notices a ladder on the side of the rail car just as a second train approaches in the opposite direction. Under Boyd's shots, the pair tries to climb the side of the means of transport. At the last second, Daniel pulls Margaret and saves her from being crushed by the second train. Meanwhile, Boyd loses the target, and the two manage to board safely. Aboard the train, Margaret suffers a strong panic attack and fears that she is developing Parkinson's like her father. Daniel supports her, assures her that her situation is different, and manages to calm her after moments of despair. In parallel, Hugo's team reports that Daniel made a new contact. An employee suggests that Santiago assemble a rescue group, but Hugo, physically very debilitated, orders everyone to leave the room. The isolation reveals that Noah is using the alien device to invade Hugo's mind. The rebel warns the villain not to treat the artifact as a weapon, explaining that the object has another cosmic purpose. Noah asks if Daniel is part of the biological experiment, which would justify his inability to access the young man's mind in the previous interrogation. Hugo confirms the theory, and Noah replies that if the plan involves only them, humanity should be left out. Hugo replies that Noah has a lonely view of the world and says that he learned the meaning of empathy from his friends. Noah asks if he was the one who helped one of the beings escape 5 years earlier. Hugo confirms the act and leaves Noah furious for having been deceived for so long. Noah asks when Hugo's conviction was lost, and Hugo replies sadly that it happened when Noah himself abandoned his principles after the death of his wife. Hugo argues that grief made Noah decide to hide the truth from all of humanity. Noah defends himself by claiming that secrecy was necessary because those entities were beyond human understanding. Hugo disagrees with the intellectual barrier and reveals that the project called In Vivo 17 does not have earthly origin, representing the closest manifestation to God that civilization has ever witnessed. Hugo asks Noah not to fear the creatures, but Noah confesses that he fears humanity itself. Noah justifies Wardex's secrecy by classifying the stolen data as a destructive virus for society, while Hugo defends people's natural thirst for truth. The debate is interrupted when employees enter the room and break the isolation. Hugo tries to expel them to protect them, but Noah visualizes the team through the mental link and cuts contact immediately. Noah orders the identification of the employees seen in Hugo's mind. The team locates the target's files, but Noah is too debilitated to lead the action. By phone, Jane asks Sister Maura whether God still loves men in the face of the cosmic immensity. Maura comforts Jane by saying that the universe is vast and that there is no problem in there being other forms of life. The nun notices that Jane never lost faith in the Creator, only in humanity, and accepts the request to investigate the meaning of the term KCXE. Meanwhile, Daniel and Margaret walk on foot when they see a fox watching them before leaving. They are held at gunpoint by men who arrive in a fire truck. However, they discover that it is Santiago's rescue. The group arrives at the rebel base, where Hugo celebrates Daniel's return. Margaret shows strong unease by guessing the names of everyone present in the warehouse. The shock increases when she sees an exact replica of her childhood residence built inside the complex. Hugo explains the effort to rebuild the structure, but Margaret refuses to enter out of fear of uncovering the truth before the right time. She rejects the burden of becoming a symbol for the group and flees inside the house to escape the religious prayers of an employee. Margaret enters the replica of the house and observes the details in amazement while Hugo and Daniel approach. When questioned about the reason for the reconstruction, Hugo explains that the setting serves as a familiar passage for Margaret to relive the past. Daniel shows confusion at the answer, and Hugo reveals that the two shared the same experience in childhood. Margaret refuses to recover the past, and her apprehension grows when she notices employees entering the place with technological equipment. Hugo tries to reassure her by reporting that the memories of February 23, 1996, were blocked in her mind. He insists that the procedure is the only path to understand the future. Even under Margaret's nervous protests, Hugo approaches and argues that she needs to face this memory to be able to control her gift and understand her true purpose. Hugo explains that Margaret needs to return to the point of origin to understand a reality beyond human capacity. He shows small paper cardinal birds and reveals that both received a gift in childhood. Margaret's remained dormant until the recent contact, while Daniel's was activated 15 years earlier, allowing him to understand the universal language. Margaret in turn received the gift of understanding human feelings, uniting the two in the same mission. Shortly afterward, Hugo uses the alien device to begin the procedure. Margaret and Daniel relive the first contact with the entities in childhood, when several animals entered Margaret's room and guided her outside under Daniel's protests. In the present, Hugo calms the young man by explaining that the creatures assume animal forms so as not to frighten the children, and Margaret describes the crossing as passing through a curtain of warm water. In the flashback, little Margaret appears lying on a table while one of the creatures abandons the animal form and reveals its true cosmic identity, frightening Daniel beside her. To reassure him, Margaret extends her hand to Daniel, and the two repeat the same gesture in the present. After recovering the lost memories, Margaret looks at Hugo and says that it is good to finally meet him again. Wardex agents invade the rebel base, and an employee warns Hugo about the imminent danger. Even debilitated, Noah continues commanding the operation from a distance. To guarantee the escape, Margaret uses the alien device and makes the entire group invisible. Noah monitors the signals on the tablet and finds the target's disappearance strange, while Margaret guides a quick withdrawal because she knows that the enemies still detect the artifact's signature. Daniel encourages everyone to move forward, and Noah orders the agents' attack upon tracking the location, making the henchmen collide against the house structure because they cannot see the group. Santiago takes advantage of the confusion to guide everyone to the fire truck and leave the warehouse under Boyd's despair. Finally, the group arrives at KCXE, revealing it to be the television station where Margaret works. Margaret hugs her boss, reveals that his son needs help and obtains authorization to start a special emergency broadcast. Daniel takes over the control room and begins the massive upload of the secret files with Hugo's support. Noah and his tactical team arrive at the building and order the immediate shutdown of the main generators. Daniel continues sending the videos at maximum speed, while Hugo receives a mysterious luminous charge. Then, the agents cut the station's power, but the emergency generators start running and restore the electricity. While Daniel and Maggie prepare to begin the broadcast, Jane also arrives at the place. However, when everything is about to begin, Serena and her team turn off the emergency generators. Noah and his team invade the television station, avoiding looking directly at Margaret so as not to suffer from her mental projections. At that moment, Jane arrives at the place and delivers another alien device to Margaret, asking her to reveal the whole truth. Margaret uses the power of the artifact to restore the building's power and positions herself to go live. Noah accepts defeat and sits silently to watch, causing Boyd to abandon the place, enraged with the other agents. Live on television, Margaret reveals that Wardex spent decades hiding the existence of extraterrestrial life, confiscating its technology and subjecting the creatures to cruel experiments. She explains that the group decided to release the data because humanity deserves to know the truth. Meanwhile, Daniel releases all the files on the internet. At first, the public believes that the images are fake or generated by artificial intelligence, but the emergence of irrefutable evidence puts the entire world on alert. As the videos are broadcast globally, Daniel finally reunites with Jane backstage. In several countries, the population watches the records in absolute shock, horrified by the cruelty practiced by the corporation against those beings. Even the journalists show enormous difficulty describing the facts, while Margaret states in the broadcast that, as unbelievable as it may seem, all of humanity is witnessing the same events. At the climax of the broadcast, Hugo appears in the studio, bringing the creature he had helped escape 5 years earlier. He brings Daniel and Margaret closer to the being so that they can have a new cosmic contact, while Noah watches everything beside his old friend. In front of the cameras, the creature transmits a direct message to the two. Daniel understands the words immediately and translates them for Margaret, who prepares to announce them to the world before the film comes to an end.